Happy weekend, everybody. Josh with Severe Weather. Hope you all are having a great weekend. I know in the eastern U.S., especially the Northeast, we are once again dealing with rain, and I wish I could change the pattern. Maybe next weekend we can get a break in that, but in the meantime, we've got to deal with another wet storm. But I'm going to talk about three systems which are all at hurricane intensity making landfall here in the next day or so. In specifically, Hurricane Tammy affecting the Leeward Islands. And the path of that storm is unfortunately slowing down more than the models showed a few days ago. And when you get slower storm systems and weaker steering environments, you also get more uncertainty. So we're going to talk about some shifts in the forecast today. And we're going to talk about local effects here. We're also going to talk about, I say we, it's actually me, but you guys are my audience, so I appreciate y'all's time. We're also going to talk about Hurricane Norma, which is moving into Los Cabos, Cabo San Lucas area here today, causing some destructive wind, waves, and heavy rainfall. And another system which is quickly intensifying in the Arabian Sea, which may be affecting those of you who may be watching from Yemen. I'm going to talk about that one as well. So let's get right to it here, and let me get that off the screen. You can see our forecast for Tammy is starting to become more uncertain. And I had said a few days ago it's going to curve away from Bermuda and not be a threat. I'm not quite as certain that's going to be the case here, as what's going to happen is high pressure is going to build offshore the East Coast next week. That's going to produce warmer weather in the eastern U.S. It's also going to slow down the progress of Tammy as it leaves the islands here early next week. And we've got all kinds of solutions now on the table, including an exit, which is still possible, a track towards Bermuda as a stronger system, maybe even still a hurricane, and even the possibility it tries to turn back towards the Bahamas and maybe the southeast coast, which is the less likely scenario, but one I am going to be keeping an eye on for you guys here. So in the tropics, Tammy's really the only threatening system. We do have a disturbance which may try to spin up briefly into a depression, but I think the chances for that are still pretty low. The Hurricane Center says 30%. I didn't refresh this, but yeah, it says 20 to 30% basically. And it's going to move into Central America, basically Nicaragua and Costa Rica here by the beginning of next week. So kind of running out of real estate to strengthen. But if you look at the tropics, you see things have definitely blown up from the last few days. Quite a bit of activity. Hurricane Norma moving into the Baja de Sur here, the southern Baja of California. That's going to cross the Gulf and head into northwest Mexico and weekend. But a lot of rain and a lot of wind with it here in the next 24 hours. Another area we're going to keep an eye on behind it, taking its time to develop, but conditions could favor more development as it gets closer to the Mexican Riviera. And then here is our disturbance spinning around Central America, a small chance it tries to develop. It may actually try to form on the Pacific side later next week. Here is now Hurricane Tammy. Winds are 85 miles per hour. Not a very organized system, but one that is producing a very small core of intense wind, and that is just east of Guadeloupe. So far, the strongest winds have remained off the coast of the Leeward Islands. We really hope it stays that way. But I will say that if you're in Antigua, some of you may call it, and Barbuda, those are the islands that stick out more to the right and have the better chance of seeing hurricane conditions here by tomorrow morning. We do have another flare up to keep an eye on here behind Tammy. Right now, not showing any organization, but it definitely has a lot of moisture with it. And all that's going to head westward towards the island. So behind Norma, unfortunately, or I should say Tammy, we are unfortunately not quite done with the tropical rains here. Here's a look at the Southwest Caribbean, area of concern off of the coast of Nicaragua. It's got a slow development pace to it, so unlikely it becomes our next system, but something I'll be watching for you guys. The Gulf is quiet, as you would expect this time of the year, as is the area off of Florida and the southeast coast. Taking a look here into the central Atlantic, you can see Hurricane Tammy got two areas of thunderstorm action. Barbados getting hit pretty good here with heavy rainfall today. And that will continue to be the case, even though the strongest winds with Tammy are well to the north and east of the center of the islands, at least at this point. So it's kind of scraping these islands, but unfortunately, even though it's made more of a turn to the right, it's going to be a threat here to Antigua and Barbuda. Behind it, we do have a flare up to keep an eye on. Wind shear is pretty high here. You can see the cloud tops getting blown off to the north and east. I don't think it's going to develop at this time. And if Tammy is slowing down, which it's predicted to do, it's going to be in the way of this system and keep it from developing. But the moisture from this system does have its eye on the Windward Islands and on the nearby coast here, Trinidad, Tobago, and the coast of South America. And that heavy rain could make its way into the Eastern Caribbean later next week. Here's a closer look at Tammy, and you can see the development has continued here despite some wind shear. We still have a storm that is gradually strengthening. It's not going to rapidly intensify. Waters are pretty warm, and that's kind of the reason we're seeing these banding features. But fortunately, things have remained just off of the islands. So an encouraging trend here that the models did kind of hint at yesterday, but you can see this inflow here producing very heavy rain over portions of Barbados, as well as St. Lucia and even the northern parts of St. Vincent here. As we take a look at radar, this is from Brian McNulty out of the U of Miami. The U here, you can see on the radar, still a pretty good core, but you can see the trend has actually been for this system to turn kind of more off to the right. So it's kind of paralleling these islands. They're pushed, they're kind of, they're leeward, they're not windward. If they were windward, they'd stick right out into where the storm is going, but they're kind of avoiding it here. So Guadeloupe is this island off to the north here. That is where the center is going to come closest here this afternoon and tonight before it moves farther away into the northern Leeward Islands here. But you can see the band of heavy rain feeds into Barbados. So we're going to see several millimeters of rain today into tonight here on the southern side, kind of a westerly flow here right across St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And fortunately, the core is holding strong, but it's not super big. So while the storm has strengthened just a touch here, it is not growing in intensity and size at the time being. So that is certainly good news. But you can see we are predicting that this storm is going to move over very warm waters and kind of move right over Antigua and Barbuda here in the next 12 to 24 hours. So late tonight, first half of Sunday, that core will be moving over those islands. Winds could get up to as high as 90 miles per hour. There's a chance the storm ends up a little bit stronger, but right now the official forecast is high-end Category 1 at 90 miles per hour. Then as the storm moves away from the Virgin Islands and the northern Leeward Islands, it may take more of a right turn, but it is slowing down some. The forecast from before hinted it'd be moving away in this direction. Now they're slowing down, and that will potentially put Bermuda in the path as we get beyond hour 120. That would be Thursday around lunchtime. So Bermuda could potentially have some effects here later Thursday or especially Friday and even next Saturday. And if the storm slows more, then we certainly could even see that change more. You can see the wind field of hurricane force winds narrowly avoiding Guadeloupe at this time. We are seeing tropical storm winds on the eastern portion of the island. We have a hurricane warning here. That's the red slash for Guadeloupe. And we have a tropical storm warning for Martinique and Dominica, but most of these stronger winds are actually avoiding those islands. So we may see those watches dropped here, but we're not going to see an end to the rain. Hurricane warning in effect for Antigua and Barbuda. And you can see the path of the storm goes basically just to the east of Barbuda and then right over Antigua here. We also have a hurricane warning for St. Kitts and Nevis, although I do think the strongest winds are going to avoid those islands to the right. But of course, we will have to see. And then the bottom kind of falls out here in the bottom. We've got a tropical storm watch or tropical storm warning and hurricane watch here for the rest. I think this is actually Nevis here, I believe. And I need to take a trip to the Caribbean and prove that myself. So I think we all need to have some nice trips in our lifetime. We only get so many years here on Earth, so we might as well enjoy the best of it if we have the means to. If we don't, I can understand that, but it is a dream of mine to get out here. Elsewhere in the northern Leeward Islands, we do have a hurricane warning in effect for St. Barthélemy. That's a territory of France, as well as for St. Martin and St. Martin, and I believe that's Dutch and English potentially. And please correct me if I'm wrong. Be nice about it, but correct me. And then Anguilla, also under a hurricane warning now. The Virgin Islands, the British ones, are under a tropical storm watch. Right now, the track, since it has shifted to the right a little bit, does show us that the likelihood of tropical storm winds here is not very big, but certainly we could have some tropical storm force winds here across Virgin Gorda and also here on Anegada, I believe is the name of the island. I could be wrong about that. You can see the future track, though, takes us obviously away from the islands here next week. The area does grow of uncertainty, and here's Bermuda, and you're not far from the Bermuda Triangle here. So we are going to be monitoring that path for you guys. Tropical models show kind of a backwards S. We're going to hit a spot here where, yes, there is certainly an escape point still, but there are also more models starting to turn it back towards the west here, and that puts Bermuda in the crosshairs and something we have to watch. And then beyond that time frame, which is about 6 to 7 days from now, the GFS ensemble shows even more of a westerly track. Now, I will say, if the storm does make its way out into here, wind shear should increase, and that should allow the storm to weaken. I don't think we're talking about a hurricane threatening the Bahamas or Florida, but a couple of more solutions hinting that it's going to get a little bit more close than we would like to see. So if you are on the East Coast, I do think you need to watch this. I don't think it's a likely scenario, but it is something we certainly need to watch. I always like to watch the trends, and if they shift, then I'm obviously going to talk about that. There's a decent chance that the trend shifts back, but you can see here in just the next 10 days, we have potential points from Port St. Lucie, Florida, all the way over here to the Azores. So a massive spread coming here, but more solutions showing a westerly turn. Now, it could get to a point here where it stalls and then eventually gets kicked out into the subtropical jet stream. I hope that's the case. Although if you're in Bermuda, that may not be a good thing. Model intensity shows some slow intensification here. One model shows a category 3. More than likely, it's a category 1 or low end category 2 here. The strength will come up a little bit more after it pulls away here from Anguilla as we get into early next week. It may actually strengthen a little more, and then wind shear should increase. So we should start to see gradual weakening before this potentially threatens Bermuda. So in Bermuda, the worst case scenarios, we have maybe a high-end tropical storm or low-end category 1 storm somewhere within a few hundred miles. The best case scenario, obviously, is we have a storm that's weakening faster and moving away to the north and east. Here's a look at the HAFS tropical model from weatherbell.com. You can see, I know this is a little tough to see because it's a smaller feature here, but you can see it's kind of dancing with the islands, but sort of avoiding them to the right. And then you see the size of the storm does grow as this moves away from the islands and Puerto Rico here early on Monday. And this growing storm does slow down. This particular model does show it getting to a certain point here where it's about 500 miles east-southeast of Bermuda, and then it starts making a hook back towards the left. The reason why is we've got a ridge of high pressure building north of this feature, and that's going to keep it from escaping to the northeast if it's correct. You can see this starts trending it back towards Bermuda, and it is growing the size of the storm, and this would be Thursday morning. So potentially we could have some impacts here as soon as maybe first thing on Friday morning in Bermuda. Here's a look at the HMON tropical model. You can see that it's got a very tight core. It's coming just to the right of Guadeloupe today, and then moving towards Barbuda and Antigua as we get to tonight. Wind gusts on these islands could exceed 60 miles per hour. And if this goes any more to the left, we could see gusts over 80 miles per hour. I would prepare for the worst at this point if you are on Antigua, but obviously expect the best out of it. After that, the storm is growing, but it is pulling away from the islands here. You can see a larger but less intense core as we start getting more wind shear, but the size of it growing and the forward speed of it slowing down means we need to keep a closer eye on things in Bermuda. You can see here kind of the southeastern side of this eye wall starts to erode as we get into Thursday, but the strongest winds actually go on to the northwestern side of the center. So if this comes closer to Bermuda, then we obviously have potential problems coming. Here's a look at wind gusts from the European model, 60 miles per hour, maybe as high as 80 miles per hour for Antigua and Barbuda. The worst of it, though, staying just to the east of these islands. Puerto Rico should be okay here. Wind gusts only up to about 20 miles per hour if this is right. Virgin Islands, maybe 30 miles per hour. Northern Leeward Islands between 35 and 50 miles per hour, hence those tropical storm warnings that are in effect. This is the ICON model, and I do want to show you this because it is the earliest of these global models that has come in so far at this time. And you can see it is making that left hook again. So we have more models that are starting to jump on that scenario for the time being. This would be Thursday evening. We've got the system about 300 miles south of Bermuda, and then it's actually got it moving towards the Bahamas, but it is weakening by next weekend. So that is something we're going to have to watch. I don't necessarily see that this is the likely forecast at this point, but it is an option that we need to keep an eye on, even in Florida at this point. So even though this looked like it was going to be a fish storm a few years ago, unfortunately, we are seeing that start to trend a little bit more into the discomfort zone for the time being. Now, don't be shocked if it goes right back to the right. I could certainly see that happening as well. Rain totals in the Caribbean, you can see we are going to see amounts of over a foot here just east of the islands, locally 4 to 6 inches on Antigua and Barbuda, 2 to 3 inches across the rest of the Leeward Islands, even eastern Puerto Rico, Vieques, U.S., Virgin Islands could see up to 3 inches of rain. And then we've got that second feature coming in later next week. That could bump our rain totals up here in places like Eastern Dominican Republic, Punta Cana, for example, even southwestern Puerto Rico, including Ponce. So a lot of rain coming for the Caribbean. And then looking farther west, Cuba avoids the heavy rain. Florida's going to have a pretty dry week, but the Bahamas may start getting some juice in here later in the week. Turks and Caicos could see a few inches of rain here by next weekend. Let's look at the Pacific. Let's move along here. Hurricane Norma is getting closer to landfall. Winds are down to 100 miles per hour. Still a powerful storm, though. It's moving north at 8 miles per hour. Our next area to watch is Invest EP 91, and that could become a depression. 70% chance of that by Tuesday. Better chance after Tuesday into about Friday or Saturday, 80% chance of development. The next name on the list would be Otis. And that is something we'll have to watch in the Mexican Riviera. Here you can see out ahead of it, Hurricane Norma is accelerating now, turning to the right and getting ready to hit Cabo San Lucas. Here you can see some pretty intense clouds moving through, and we're going to see nasty surf here and deteriorating conditions this afternoon here on Cabo San Lucas. And then the storm, as it goes over land, is expected to weaken and accelerate towards the northwest coast of Mexico. It'll cross the lower part of the Gulf here and will weaken over land, but produce quite a bit of rain. Here's a look at the Mexican official radar from Cabo San Lucas. And you can see a little bit tough to see what's going on here, but you can see there is a core right in here, and it is tracking slowly northward. Very heavy rain just off of Cabo. You can see, though, a southeasterly flow coming in here, pounding this coastline this afternoon with very heavy wind and very heavy rain as well. We can see the official forecast does show weakening here tonight down to 85 miles per hour. It'll be a tropical storm as it crosses the lower Gulf over the rest of the weekend. Then a second landfall coming here north of Mazatlan, with winds weakening down to about 50 or even 45 miles per hour, and then a remnant low. But what's left of the moisture from this is going to continue to cross the mountains and move across the Sierra Madre and then towards Texas next week. You can see we're not running models beyond this point anymore. And we're going to see weakening as the storm continues to batter and move northward here along Cabo San Lucas into Los Cabos, and then crossing back here to the Gulf later tomorrow. Here's a look real quick at how the storm looks to be structured. Wind gusts of 60 to 80 miles per hour on the south coast here. Then we will continue to see some strong winds getting ready to pound the coast perpendicular. So this will cause nasty storm surge, high winds, and heavy rain as it comes ashore. This time frame is going to be later tomorrow morning here in western Mexico, and then very quickly things degrade as our storm center opens up into a remnant low. We do have something else to watch. This is off the coast of Yemen, very quickly intensifying Cyclone Tej, I believe it's called, TEJ. And you can see this was a depression a day ago. Now it's up to 75 miles per hour, likely to go up to extremely severe cyclonic storm here as it crosses the waters of the Northwest Arabian Sea. They're very warm. The outflow is growing and landfall is expected here. It will weaken before it does that. Wind shear ramps up here over the eastern Gulf of Aden, but a lot of rain and wind coming to areas east of the center, including Salalah. So if you're watching from Yemen, be preparing for this dangerous storm. Let's look at the U.S. I know a lot of y'all are watching. You're done with the tropics. We should be. It's almost November, but we're still talking about them. But big trough swings east here. We've got cool air coming in for the rest of the weekend. We will dry out. Then we see a big ridge building in from the Gulf to the north and east. So a hot week expected across the Gulf Coast, places like Louisiana and southeast Texas. Here's a trough digging south that's going to pick up what's left here of Hurricane Norma and pull that moisture very quickly up to the right, to the north and east, I should say. And by the second part of next week, we're going to see increasing winds aloft that could fuel some severe weather as we get into western and central Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. We also have a very fast jet stream moving across the northern United States next week. That is actually going to leave, but you can see next weekend and beyond a very strong trough predicted to move into the eastern U.S. And that is going to lead us to some very dramatic temperature changes, stronger winds, maybe even some severe weather along this front as we get closer to Halloween, and then a big drop in temperature coming behind it. Here's the European model from earlier today. You see our coastal low moving up into New Brunswick here tonight. Heavy rain battering Maine, New Hampshire, and southeast Quebec. Certainly heavy rain in the Maritimes as well. Then we dry out next week. You can see things are going to warm up. We are going to see thunderstorms and tropical moisture involved with this next system. Even some heavy rain in southeastern Arizona and parts of eastern New Mexico, expanding on up into Iowa and Wisconsin. This time frame is Tuesday evening. We see waves coming along the front into Missouri, into Oklahoma and West Texas, even into Thursday. And then you can see things starting to lift out to the north and east. And there is colder air coming in behind this. So significant snow is expected here across the Rockies, kind of coming in two waves. The first one comes in early next week over the prairies into the interior of the Northwest. Then the second wave comes through Friday, Saturday, early on Sunday. And this could be a significant storm somewhere near the Hudson and James Bays early the following week. By the way, we could have thunderstorms all the way up into the St. Lawrence Valley, all the way up into New England on the 30th. This is going to be end of our warm weather for a while, it looks like. Here's a look at excessive rain forecast. We do have a slight chance for some flooding here in parts of central and northern New England later today into tonight. Rain totals could get over 2 inches, maybe even locally 3 near the Vermont and Quebec border. Once again, a wet weekend here in Maine, unfortunately. We are going to see some potentially stormy weather as we get into Tuesday of next week. Chance for thunderstorms as we get into the day on, I believe actually, that was Monday. This is Tuesday. We do now have a slight risk on day 4 for central and northern Iowa, southwestern Wisconsin, southeastern Minnesota, getting close to the Twin Cities as well. Rain totals are going to be pretty heavy in areas of Texas and Oklahoma here as we get into this upcoming week. Unfortunately, those of you that really need the heavy rain, Southeast Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, are not going to get it in the next 7 days. Unfortunately, that ridge of high pressure is just a little too strong. But as we take a look farther off to the north here, we can see totals across Iowa, Kansas, and Missouri could get over 2 inches, maybe even over 3 inches, which could cause us a little bit of flash flooding. Parts of New Mexico are going to see that heavy rain as well. And then looking into the upper Midwest, we do see significant rain totals north of Chicago, including much of Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, even lower Michigan here, as we've got a ridge of high pressure in the southeast, a front moving slowly into this area. Certainly there's a heavy rain threat with it. And yes, let's talk about some snow here. You can see we're seeing that invasion from Canada of snow into Montana, into Idaho, into Washington State here by Tuesday morning. Significant totals here, over 10 inches around Glacier National Park Tuesday and Tuesday night. Could have a significant snowstorm. We also have another invasion coming down through Quebec and maybe some higher elevation snow later this week across, not really later this week, actually be earlier this week coming up over upstate New York. But take a look at what's coming beyond that. This is a look at how much snow could fall between now and Halloween morning. And we see amounts that are potentially as much as over 2 feet in the Tetons around Glacier National Park, over 1.5 feet in the Cascades, and very heavy snow coming down through Quebec. We could start looking at lake effect totals here, piling up off of Lake Superior, off of Lake Huron, and even a little bit off of Lake Erie by the time we get into Halloween. So keep an eye on that. We're going to talk about more of that next week. But I really appreciate y'all's time today. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. If you did enjoy this video, please consider becoming a subscriber. If you are a longtime subscriber, I thank you for your support. We do have a membership option if you feel led to pay 33 cents a day. It's $9.99 a month. If you feel led to, no pressure. It does help me out. And those folks, of course, are going to get more interaction with me as well. But y'all have been wonderful to me, and I'm here to help you all be safe. I'm also here to just give all the glory to God. Just give it away and let God control everything that goes about, because I can't do this all alone. I can't do it without you guys. I feel God has led you to my channel today. I realize if you're not a believer, I'm not going to judge you for that, but I truly believe that's the reason. He has created the heavens and the earth. And just wanted to read a quick word of encouragement. Psalm 19:1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork. And basically, all of this work that's put into how beautiful our earth is God's work. It just doesn't happen randomly. It didn't happen randomly millions of years ago, I don't believe. I just don't think there's enough evidence to show that. I truly believe that we're all guided by God. He's put us here on earth for a reason, and we don't have a lot of time here. So in the end of your time on earth, you've got a choice to make. You can believe that God created the earth and he sent his son Jesus to die on the cross so that you can enjoy that life eternally with him, or you have the uncertainty of not knowing what's next. For me, I didn't want to roll the dice and say I don't really want to know what's next, because it is a scary thought. If you don't have a future that you don't believe in, then it is a scary thought. It's frightening to me. I think a lot of people fear death, but I think what a lot of people need to understand is that going out on faith, that there is that chance that you will be able to live eternally and live with God in perfect form. So I just wanted to share that encouraging word with you, because that's what I truly believe. I believe that's what leads me to do this every day. It's to encourage other folks, to lift them up, to share my faith. And of course, I'm happy to pray for you in whatever situation you're in. Hope you all have a great weekend. I'm going to chat with you again on Monday, some updates on the storms as we get through the weekend on my YouTube page and Facebook page as well. Y'all have a great weekend. See you on Monday. Take care.